evening. Tonight is a special meeting of the council. Hello. Let's take a look.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Here.
Councilmember Fahey.
Here.
Councilmember Cooperman.
Here.
Councilmember Hefner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dickinson.
Here.
Councilmember Kern.
Here.
Mayor Lay.
Here. Welcome. Tonight we have pretty much one thing on the agenda. And that is our first discussion of the 2024. A little bit of review of 2025 as well. What we're gonna do is to have public comments on what has been provided previously. And thank you in advance for all of those here in the room and elsewhere who've provided public comments. Second, we're going to have a presentation by city manager, city manager, Fox, and we'll have a council discussion then about the work plan. I wanted to set some expectations both for council, for public, and staff. That they need expectations set, but really are three. The first is this is a kickoff meeting. It's not the only one. You don't hear your priorities as a member of the public necessarily on the written notes, which are going to be projected in front of us as they go. Don't worry about it, because there's lots of inputs that we're going to have to consider. Public comment, of course, or mission recommendations, resident surveys, vision and values, which we have put together as part of the community process around the comp plan, and not the last but absolutely not least, budget, which I think informs and should inform this discussion. Second, the measure of our success tonight is not that we leave with a pristine work plan, because we're not going to do that. The measure of our success, at least I would suggest, ought to be that we have an initial, robust, high-level discussion about several things. One, strategic priorities, and two, priority actions. And there'll be more on those. Council's aware of categories, but we'll put some guardrails around those, some definitions shortly. And third, we're gonna try to get out of here at 7:30. So hang on.
Dinner plans.
Oh, you can still make dinner plans. There you go. So with that, why don't we take public comments first of all? And if you like, probably the best place to do that is if you wouldn't mind coming up to the front of our little mini dais here, and I think the city what we'll call your name. If you've, I don't know, we filled out cards or anything like that tonight. All right,
Not tonight.
there aren't that many people in our studio audience, so please, if you want to sit, that's fine. If you want to stand up, just tell us your name. Tell us where you- Very good. You can sit down and that's fine. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Jody Ash, I am the chair of PPLAP. I just wanted to, come and thank you for considering a request to review the IPM. And, we'll see that later. But I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of a rundown. You know, we say that we want to be an environmentally sustainable community. And now we need to start being sustainable, right? And pesticides are a really big part of that. The soil microbiome is the biggest sequester of CO2. If we would take care of our soil, there's a good chance that we would not have a CO2 issue. And it's almost really that simple. It's never been proven safe. On the contrary, children are at a disproportionate vulnerability and a risk of being affected, as well as our pollinators, birds, and wildlife. Louisville citizens are very concerned. And I know that the squeaky wheel always gets the oil, and I've heard from Adam and him saying that, you know, he gets tons of emails about dandelions and weeds and, you know, but at what cost? You know, at what cost? And so just really quick, I just wanted to give a quick rundown of commonly used lawn pesticides. 17 are linked with cancer or carcinogenity. 11 are linked with birth defects, 19 with reproductive defects, 24 with liver or kidney damage, 14 with neurotoxicity, 18 with disruption to the endocrine system, and there are 17 of them are detected in our groundwater. 24 are toxic to fish and other aquatic organisms vital to our ecosystem. 11 are toxic to bees. 16 are toxic to birds. And I just kind of wanted to put that out there, just to start the conversation, to start you thinking about it. And we would really greatly appreciate if that would be considered topic for your work plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
We bought it out, I'm going next. I'm Don Archer, 378 Grouse Court, just about 11 years. Grandfather and her granddad. My concerns are that I don't feel like it work plan as it's been envisioned addresses sustainability or DEI. I know we have the lenses, but I don't see DEI or sustainability showing up in the work plan that the draft or whatever was out. So I would ask for specifics, maybe add a couple of columns for DEI and sustainability, specifically climate action and biodiversity, which may be the end of humankind in 100 years. In DEI, this city may be more than most can really use some DEI with the lack of diversity, equity, and maybe inclusion. So, and something that might be added is another theme or another category is community vitality instead of economic vitality, to indicate that we care about our people and not just economics. So community vitality or community well-being, that sounds like a better category to me. The specifics, my dad had Parkinson's, passed away about 10 years ago. I saw an article that said that if you live within a mile of a golf course that uses city water, I don't know what we use, but that doubles your risk of Parkinson's, and that's a bad thing. And I'd like to see us get rid of the golf course anyway. I'd like to see it rewilded. Another thing that could be included, specifics example would be e-bikes. From where I sit in our house, I just see so many young people riding e-bikes fast. Couple of young ones on the one e-bike, and they're not looking. So those are examples of specifics that I'd like to see in the work plan that the council and staff would address. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Good.
Right. Hi, I'm Catherine Smith. I live in Ward 3, and I want to say I support the comments of the villagers before me. And I wanted to let the council know that I support the additions that LSAP has submitted to you, and I infer from the fact that they gave you addition that the current approach of using sustainability as a lens is not fully functional. With regard to OSAP, I really like that they are suggesting a collaborative approach for our natural resource management. One thing that I would like to see, which I was surprised wasn't mentioned in there at all, is the importance of having a good acquisition process. The last time I went to a joint city council OSAP meeting was not this year, but the year before, in which there was a lot of discussion about the need to fine tune that. And I know for going to the latest OSAP meeting, that is still a priority of theirs, so I was surprised it wasn't actually on their list. One thing that we could explore, if we have limited resources, is a stronger partnership with the county, which does have extensive resources to deal with issues like tracking properties and knowing whether they're on the market and available. And I would like us to take a second look at the amount of money we're setting aside for that acquisition fund and considering whether we should increase that and sacrifice some of the requests of staff. That I'm drawing I'm drawing a bright line between what OSAP is recommending and what I'm recommending. And my emphasis is more on the acquisition than on beefing up staff. And I know we just have to make value judgments. And I do want to ask you, when you're looking at fiscal responsibility, I've been to several meetings where Councilman Hoffner has pointed out that a lot of our contract money is going to the public community engagement, that process. And that appears to be true to me. I don't see as many contracts as you guys do, but I certainly have seen some contracts where there's an awful lot of money going to that consultation process. And I would like our staff to take a hard look at our contracting process. I know money is likely to become tighter in the coming year. And I think that's one place where we might be able to gain some efficiencies and still deliver a high level of services to the community. So I want to thank you for bringing. I would like to see Louisville focus on the level of service as we grow. So I'm concerned about libraries and rec centers and ballparks for kids and all of that. And I'm not seeing that reflected in our comprehensive plan process, which is why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, I think you got your 3 minutes.
I think it's exactly done. You want me to discuss?
You're good. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Solution was actually great. Yeah, you did get interrupted by the, maybe that was part, I don't know. Is that part of your presentation?
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Kelly.
Hello, everybody. I'm John Cowley. 303 Fairfield Lane. This is completely unprepared, so I may stumble and bubble, but it's only for 3 minutes. Somewhere in this, we'll see tonight, there's a statement that's saying the work plan will only include items that can be easily completed within a year. And that triggered some things for me. And I have 3 examples of very important things that probably can't be done in a year. One of them is my concern for, and this is new, for affordable housing. We have the city's committed to a certain amount of affordable housing. And I understand there are many hundreds. We're many hundred short of units of affordable housing. And I'm sure that can't be accomplished within a year. But it certainly can be started. Planning can be started. Properties can be found and bought if necessary. The Willoughby Corner that the county just completed in Lafayette is a great example of what can be done. It's all electric, geothermal, solar panels. So that's one item that I think needs to be part of what we need to do if we're really serious about increasing and meeting our affordable housing goals. The second is the Cinnabar CU development. And people say, oh, the city doesn't have much control, so CU can do what it wants on that property. Well, it's gonna impact the city. We need to fund bike paths for safe travel to Home Depot and the new King Supers. We're gonna need play areas and open space, because there are gonna be kids both there, and if we accomplish some affordable housing. You might want to look at a transit, a potential future transit between Cinnabar and downtown. And it could be an electric shuttle bus. There are gonna be hundreds of customers who wanna come downtown frequently. If we have train service, there's gonna be a connection to that. So there are a lot of things that do affect the city with the Cinnabar development that I think should be part of what's being looked at. I mean, it's within a year or two, it's gonna need to be built. And a third item that I don't know much about, I was with the Sustainability Advisory Board when the internal decarbonization plan was developed. And it was really exciting that the city was putting solar panels on buildings and I understand the funds for that have been lost. All the grants that were available, it's crazy, but I understand. Something creative to find some funds to get a start. To pick one building, the library, to find the funds.
That's 3 minutes. I just realized what music was for. I think,
Yes.
Stage left.
yeah. that's true.
And those are my points.
Thank you. And by the way, anybody who wants to follow up their comments with written comments, you're right. Please do, because I know that 3 minutes can be a challenge. Anybody online who has hands raised?
No.
Check, okay. Thanks. Why don't we start? I'll introduce this, and this is a combined effort, all of this actually, between public and staff and obviously council. I believe that deputies, managers, and officers meet us off in just a minute. And then strategic priorities that we have currently and changes that we want to make to that group. And then also the priority actions. This is going to be challenging because I think it is always council's push to want to get more specific. And that's why I think we'll talk a little bit about what those two parts, you see a very familiar chart, and hopefully it'll be familiar to the public too, about that. And I really ask the staff to explain what they need, because this is really important for both what the staff is bubbling up to us and what we need to focus on in common language. Right. So, and then finally, we'll sum up a little bit. Part of that will be us, and part of that will be the city manager is my dad. Now, during this, the last thing is, there's gonna be some notes. I don't know how you're gonna do the notes and keep track of them, but they will flash on the screen or be split screen at times. Part of the discussion. Again, just want to make sure this is not a reason why it's on here electronically is that it's not a final document. So with that, turn it.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm Sama Fox, Deputy City Manager. As you all know, I'm going to start, and Manager Diana Langley is going to tag team this with me. Just want to start with purpose and expectations. So this is our first meeting to set the 2026 council work plan and priorities, and will help us prepare for the supplemental budget conversation. We will also, just a reminder that this council work plan reflects council work only. So it's beyond day-to-day services, and it's focused on council policy issues for a year. There was a good comment raised earlier. Do these have to be items that are completed within a year? Not necessarily. Many items on your current council work plan, for example, the comprehensive plan, last more than a year. They can still be something that's on your council work plan, as long as you're actively working on them in that year. Your 2026 work plan should be achievable, and it should maintain alignment with the resident survey, the comprehensive plan, the budget. We're going to do a little bit of background on the strategic framework, review the 2025 work plan, and then open discussion for the 2026 work plan priorities. So we have a few slides to go through, and then we'll open discussion. City Manager Langley will share notes during the discussion portion, so you can see those captured. A little bit about the background. As you know, a work plan represents council's annual priorities above and beyond day-to-day services. It is intended to be achievable and may need to be adjusted. And something that we heard a little bit about last year is you've got a priority area called core services, but I don't see my item there. Core services is not meant to be an exhaustive list of everything the city is doing or of all the core services. It's just what the council is focused on from a policy perspective for that year in the priority area of core services. So it's not an exhaustive list. Your work plans may need to be adjusted. It's always important to remember changes have impacts. So we can't always add new things. Sometimes we're going to have to adjust priority levels, change timing, maybe switch priorities. And then this is used to guide your department, board, and commission plans. I think it's a good moment to remind everyone too that your boards and commissions, many of them have submitted items for this work plan, and you can see those attached. Make sure you're taking a look at those as we go through. And I'd like to invite Manager Langley to comment on the slide.
Yeah, so I'm gonna come up here. So I know you've seen this probably multiple times at this point. And so there's a couple of things that I want to, the strategic goals, the 40,000 feet, that aligns with what council has identified as the 4 priorities. So that's currently economic vitality, core services, safety, and housing. And then you have your priority action items. And so those are the specific items that you've listed under these strategic goals. And so tonight, as we're talking about the 2026 work plan, we're really focusing on these strategic goals, which would be establishing the goals and aligning the goals with the resources. And then the priority action items would be establishing those, and then leave it up to staff to determine the sub-projects that would be needed to implement them. As the mayor noted, the intent of the discussion today is to really have a comprehensive discussion related to what you want on the 2026 work plan. Identify some of these priority action items, but we also don't expect this conversation to be finalized, and we would go back summary submitted to council so that we can have additional follow-up as necessary to help complete this work plan.
Thank you. So a little reminder of our hierarchy of need. Work that the city has done is truly impressive. And one of the things we've gotten good at over the last few years is doing more with less. However, we also want to be a sustainable organization, and doing more with less is not sustainable forever. So I invite council to look at, as we're working through this, are we really taking care of our core services and operations? Have we prioritized that urgent and critical? And then get to those community demand and aspirational items to make sure that we've got the base needs really well supported for our community. As you recall from last year, we adjusted the strategic framework for this. So we really spent a lot of time last year combining existing plans, the community survey, council priority into these strategic priorities, which are then used in your one-year council work plan, or organizational work plans, and to inform budget decisions and board and commission work plans. So they're very cohesive and aligned. In our 2025 approach, council defined the problem and opportunity, and council defined what was successful if. how success looked like for each problem or opportunity. And then staff put those projects in. We then met together and reviewed and revised this until council was ready to adopt, and the work plan met council's expectations. That's a little bit of the background. We'd like to do a recap of where we are 5 months into our 2025 council.
Right, and so you all have a copy of the 2025 council work plan. And it identifies the 4 priorities, the 2 lenses. It also identifies guiding documents and introduction. And then for each priority, there's a description, additional guiding documents, 2025 projects and actions, and then potential partners. Slide, please. So some of the guiding documents that inform this plan include the city charter, city code, the budget, community survey, and comprehensive plan. And at this point, you've heard multiple times about the council's 4 priorities, so economic vitality, core services, safety, and affordable housing, and the 2 lenses in which city operations is to be evaluated through, which is equity, diversity, and inclusion, and environmental sustainability. So going to economic vitality, the description of economic vitality, also known as economic prosperity, includes completion of current planning initiatives such as the comprehensive plan and downtown vision plans, code updates to continue a business-friendly approach, and traditional economic development focuses such as business attraction and retention. And so through this, here's some of the priority items that you identified. So comprehensive plan is in progress, downtown vision front and center is in progress, EBC policy recommendations in progress, in which we've had CHIPS approved. And then post-comp plan in progress, you've had targeted development code updates come to you for council consideration. And then once the comp plan is adopted, the intent is to slide right into the development code rewrite. And we would expect staff to be bringing forward the RFP to get the consultant on board prior to adoption of the comp plan so that we can just glide right into that next phase. Next slide, please. This is the one core services. You've heard from a couple of the different advisory boards that because they didn't see specifically like the library listed under core services, that meant it's not a core service. What these items identify are just policy priority action items that council wanted to focus on this year. The core services are broad ranging with a 2025 focus on maintaining existing infrastructure and assets, including utilities, parks, open space, and sustainable asset management, as well as city communications. In terms of building the foundation, that focused on study session topics such as facilities, transportation, infrastructure, open space, technology. We have the utility master plan in progress. You've awarded a contract for the PROS long range plan and trails master plan. And then we have community communications in progress, the accessibility ADA plan in progress, and then these other projects. So the only thing that has not been started is the EDI task force follow-up. Next, please. Safety, the description is safety is a core priority for council with a desire for residents to feel safe being in our community, and a 2025 focus on bike and pedestrian safety, traffic safety, disaster and emergency preparedness. So under building the foundation, potential study session topics included police and public safety, emergency response and disaster preparedness, cybersecurity, information technology, and mental health. Traffic safety overview, and there was a study session that was done earlier this year related to traffic safety. Preparedness, you all provided direction to proceed with initiating discussions with Boulder ODM to join Boulder ODM, and then also preparing an RFP for updates some of our emergency operations plan. The WUI code, that is in progress. And some of you saw the article today about Boulder, City of Boulder. They've taken the steps to adopt the 2024 international code with amendments. And that's something that working with Rob to determine what we need to do to come into compliance with that. And then potential citywide defensible space, that's in progress as well. So the last item is housing, which includes implementation of the housing plan through development and adoption of code changes and policies, partnership with regional efforts and emphasis on the importance of affordable housing and a push to break ground on new units within Louisville. As part of the budget, you budgeted $2 million to put towards affordable housing. And looking at this, building the foundation included a potential overview of housing legislation and or another meeting with the housing authority. That has not started. The code update related to the ADUs is completed with the exception that we need to bring forward related to the tap fees to finalize that. The code update for inclusionary housing ordinance that has not started. Potential city initiated rezoning that's in progress. Potential property acquisition or project contribution for the creation of affordable housing that's in progress. And then Prop 123 compliance that's in progress as well. So with the application of lenses, equity, diversity and inclusion, environmental sustainability, you've noticed in the updated council communication template, we've added a 2025 work plan item so that staff can identify how that item supports the 2025 work plan. Often there's discussion related to EDI or sustainability. And one of the things that we're finding interesting is staff's preparing these council communication reports, unless it's a specific project that's identified, in which they're writing an item related to that project, they're having a hard time seeing the connection with the work plan. And so that's one of the areas that we are working on is, all of the items that we bring forward to council should be supporting these 4 council priorities of something. And so regardless of whether or not it actually aligns with a specific priority item, it should be supporting these 4 priorities. And so we're working on that as well. And then here's just a summary graph showing progress as to where we are on the action items that council identified as part of the 2025 work.
So for your 2026 recommended approach, we've reviewed the progress in the 2025 council work plan, and you have that in front of you if you'd like it. We'd like to ask council to identify adjustments to priorities as needed. What's helpful for us is if you can identify the problem or opportunity and what success looks like around that. Staff will then come back and plug in the projects. This is not your last conversation. We'll bring you back drafts and we'll have iterative conversations to review and revise this work plan. I think it's helpful to show a timeline here because there are a lot of interconnected parts with your work plan. You can see we're at the very start of this work plan. You're working on your comprehensive plan. You've got your budget retreat coming up. We'll have additional budget work through the summer, and we'll have comprehensive plan adoption late summer. We plan to adopt our budget November 3, and we have an election November on council of that election. So we've got reserved space for new council seating if necessary. We have planning a 2025 recap to your work plan, and then assuming there's any turnover in council, we plan to come back to your work plan on January 13th with adoption for January 20th. This roughly mirrors last year's timeline, and we can adjust this if we need to as we progress through. With that, I'd like to hand this back over to the mayor for discussion.
You want to go back a slide? Curious in the timeline, I see the comp plan, budget retreat, budget work, comp plan, budget, election, council, recap. I don't see on any of these bullet points another in here discussion of the 26 work plan. So is it embedded in these an idea that we'll be having meetings that are specifically for 2026 work plan discussion sprinkled within that, or do you see them as part of those meetings or sprinkled within?
So depending upon progress tonight, ideally, if we needed to have another work plan meeting, we would have it prior to the budget retreat. And then, after the budget retreat, we would schedule additional meetings, and the legal does not add them to extend these meetings to address it as well.
Thank you.
I think what's really important with the work plan is that, this helps us at council policy. And so from a city staff perspective, this is the guiding document that helps support is what we are doing aligned with what council's direction is. How are we supporting council's priorities and direction? And for the projects that we identified, are they supporting council's priority action items that they're identifying for the year? This is separate from the day-to-day operations that we do to make sure that the city functions. But this document is so important, and so, you know, the discussion that we had is we don't want to rush this tonight to try to finalize what council's priorities are or what the action items are, because this really sets the tone for next year. And it helps us to, it also sets the tone for the budget discussion. And we want to make sure that we are supporting council, supporting the community. And one last note is that Jenny sent out a supplemental email today that had some public communication in it as well, from Susan Liu, and then also Anne, related to council's priorities. So I think it's important for council members to review that as well.
Thanks. I think before we go on, I want to take just a couple of minutes, but we've got, I told you that you get us out of here at 7:30. That's push. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but if there are questions about the seats, I want. Raise those. So the first piece here is to talk a little bit about the excuse me, the strategic call them goals. If you wouldn't mind, actually what I want to do is to quickly flash the goals. It's like, it's the airplane document.
Okay.
This helped me in while she's getting that up. What I would say is one of the things that we did that was, I think, very innovative last year. Not always, you know, it was frustrating at times for some, but one of the things we did last year was to try to make the documents a little bit easier for staff, council, communication, and being on the same page. If you can just block out everything but the second and third of those, that's really what we're trying to do tonight. And right now, the strategic goal. So I think what I want to do is just, you've got, I think, in the packet, definitions of the 4 areas we have right now. And I just want to make sure that if we have changes to those larger buckets, because again, we're trying to relate, we'll try to relate 40 actions, these to be able, as best we can, put them in one of the buckets. They're not silos. We do the best we can, and some of them are probably splash over from one to the other. What I'd like to do, just to keep this moving, is you've got about these 4, whether one needs to drop off, whether one needs to be renamed or added to. Please, that's what we're looking for here. If there's questions about definitions, and we can talk about that too, but I know most of our conversation is going to be on priority actions, so thoughts about the 4 that we have. You can start wherever you want. Yes.
I'll just say that I agree with these 4 priorities that were set last year. And I think that it's important to note that there's a lot of overlap. And when we're talking like safety, this includes all of the disaster preparedness, sustainability, all kinds of different things are all included under safety, but not specifically called out. But those things are also included in vitality and core services and housing, and how we integrate those 2 overreaching goals into all of this. So I think I agree with what you're saying.
Others.
I think I think I've struggled to have core services as part of this list. Because I think of it as, you know, it's council's work plan, what is council working on this year? So this is not an indication of like. Core services aren't important to us, they are core, they are incredibly important. Elements of what it is we do, sort of, you know, but kind of conversation of like. Oh, well, is the budget on here? It's, well, we do the budget every year, we're gonna spend time on that. That's a council effort this year. Is council committed to spending our meeting time on Tuesday nights to discussing, debating, and giving policy direction about our core services? Is that something that is a priority to us this year? Are we not delivering our core services well? Do we want to enhance our core services? Do we want to change who's providing our course? What is it that council is gonna do this year in regards to core services? And I just feel like it's more of an indication of something we care about and is important to us, and that staff must execute is of highest priority. But is it something we're gonna spend time on this year, like discussing, debating, and changing our policies or recreating policies or anything? So that's kind of throw it out there as a 2026 work plan. I'm missing what we're doing in that realm.
We'll get to talking about this second.
No, I don't need an answer.
We'll come back. To reply to Philip's comments. Which I would largely agree with. That, I think it would be helpful to better define what micro services or what we think should, generally speaking, fall into that bucket. You know, like, do we want to have like it's, I don't know, recreation service in a certain sense, absolutely. But you know, does it make sense to separate any of those out or not? Or do we want to have such a broad bucket? I don't know, I mean, and in terms of whether or not it should be a priority for 2026, I think that kind of depends on. Well, you know, as you said, it should always be a priority, but whether it should be listed as one of our high priorities for this year, I think, so whether or not there are projects or things that are going to. And I feel the same way about the other items, right? They all are priorities, whether they should be the top priorities. What we're gonna be doing next year. So that's one of my thoughts. I mean, again, like the safety could be a core service, but we chose to separate it out. So maybe we would have a discussion around what we want to those core services. The other thing I would say, I don't see any need to sort of pull us to have fewer priorities. I would like to see us probably have more. Particularly, I think environmental sustainable. But again, like, I don't know, I said some of this in January, like, I'm not a huge fan of like having a certain number of buckets and just trying to fit everything into them. I'd rather just have a large number of priorities or a larger number of priorities and just say like, well, these projects address these priorities. And if we wanted to, like, we could look at all the projects that we ended up putting on the work plan and saying, well, okay, this year, more of them have to do with economic vitality than these other priorities. So economic vitality is a higher priority this year, it's because we have more stuff. But
Oh, and
wait,
sorry.
just get through everybody first.
Yes.
We'll get back to that, but okay. Yes.
Yeah, I'll just make the case for keeping or maybe slightly modifying core services, which is. At least on finance committee, I think more broadly, budget conversations. We keep running into problems that we're trying to do quite a lot of things. And we're stretching this out pretty thin, the number of things we're asking them to do, the amount of money we have. And so to me, part of the core services conversation is how do we ensure that we are delivering all of the services that we've already agreed we should be delivering in a way that is cost effective and isn't burning people out. And is sort of financially sustainable over the long term. And then on top of that, we get a lot of interest in what I would call new core services. An art center, new golf clubhouse, sports fields, right? We could make quite a long list of things people are interested in doing. That I think that would go into the bucket of core services. And if we want to do probably any of those things, we need to sort of address whatever gaps exist in our current service delivery, right? Like we have a ongoing problem in the parks budget that needs to be addressed. And then figure out, well, if we want to do any of these new core services, where does the money come from? Is it the balance with a bond measure like we did for the rec center expansion? Is it making some other trade-off? And sort of what is the set of core services and how do we deliver it in a way that's consistent with our values? To me is valuable, and I would want to spend valuable meeting time on. I think I agree with Mayor Pro Tem that I don't think we spend a lot of time through rehashing stuff that we're already doing. That's important, but it's working. And like, we don't need to sit around and talk about that. But I do think there's sort of some gaps that we need to look at, and then some aspirations that we need to think about if we're going to try and tackle it. How do we make a foundation? And
I actually agree with Councilmember Hefner. I think I think we've done a lot of good work this year, and let's keep in mind that for almost a year, we also took the time to work together, work with staff and the interim city manager, finding a new city manager, a list for every single member of council. And I think if there's anything on that list that has not been initiated yet, the fact that we got you accomplished for this city says a lot.
For
I'm just saying, right?
we should move
Basic
that out
core
to the
service.
bottom of this list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and that took a lot of our time, a lot of conversation, right? Figuring out how do we get you here, basically, right? How do we find you, how do we get you there? So I think that is a huge component of core service, but I do agree. I think that maintaining the core services that we have, doing them effectively and efficiently, cost effectively, I think the community right now, everybody's stretched. The entire reason housing is actually on this and his number is on the top four is because people do not have the funds to buy something. We're trying to help people have a higher quality of life being here in Louisville. And it is our high responsibility to, I believe, to deliver on what the residents have already said that they want us to deliver on. Core services, safety, economic vitality, the top three things our residents want us to focus on. So I think saying to them, maybe it's priority, maybe it's not, is not the right message. I think it is focusing on keeping things cost effective. I do agree. I actually think that parks, rec, ball fields, what have you, are part of the core services. And those are things that are going to require a lot of our conversations in the next year or more. So I would actually like them to stay on here. And I do think housing is, something that not only is the governor and is their direction from the state that we focus on, but I think we listen to the community, and as the legislators of this community is something that we want to focus on. And there are lots of underlying components to the housing. So that is not something I would want to change, and I kind of like the way that we do this, where we have these four and then we have the subcategories. So I think that we just continue, tweak it, add to it. I think it's like improve it based on what other conversations we've had and we've heard, and continue our path.
Thank you. So looking at these four strategies we have outlined, I am in favor of moving forward with those four broad strategies. I have a few tweaks I would like to propose. The first is I'd like us to have a discussion about the definition and title of economic vitality. And maybe expanding what that means for us, thinking of energy sustainability as well, so not just businesses. Looking at housing, there's some places in the documents where it's called affordable housing and other places where it's labeled as just housing. I would like to propose that we label it housing, because it actually encompasses more than affordable housing. And I am later on going to propose another, priority action item that fits under that. Safety, I don't have a lot of changes right now at the moment as far as the title and definition, but core services, I do think we would be remiss to remove that from, our work plan. And in addition to what's already been mentioned, I think we heard tonight something that could be slotted as a priority action item under that title as well. When I'm looking towards the future, and I'm seeing, you know, the comprehensive plan, I'm seeing RTRs, growth in the city, mandates coming from the state that can affect growth. We need to think, as you know, Catherine mentioned, of like, how are we going to ensure that the core services we provide keep up with the future planning of our city, and then put from our work plan. There's a probability that we could trip and not align with what the future is going to look like. That's it for now.
I don't have a huge number of things to add, because I hear a fair amount of census on this keeping category general to me, so we explain that as well. But personally, I agree keeping core services there is critical, because that's and the reason is largely, I think, particularly by Councilmember Hefner, I think we talking about the fiscal sustainability on that, service levels on that. One of the things that I have grown to get over since I started as council member, is just a number of kind of aspirational things that I'd love for us to do. Because from where I sit now and in hearing from all of you, the community, the whole city, to get it from all sides, maybe too, but from all sides, it's bigger. And what I hear from staff is they need to focus. And I think making sure we take care of all the core services with the people that really asked us to do. And I do think that a lot, to Mayor Pro Tem's point, a lot of it's we're not going to talk to, but it's true for all of what the staff is doing. A lot of stuff just flows. But there are going to be some pretty significant discussions. I just have a strong feeling about the various core services, how it's going to be against one another for priority and time and dollars and staff and all of it, especially because we have very big budgetary constraints currently, big revenue challenges, and opportunities. But anyway, I like all of those very much. I appreciate Councilmember Cooper, who's kind of flipping a script, if you will. And because I think this is, and I often say in my own business, you know, analysis of a legal issue is facts, talking to the law, talking to the facts. It's very important, I think, to think about both all of these priorities lined up against each other, if that's the way to think about times, and to think of them in buckets. I think it's and buckets isn't really dividing out simply because they do flow as Councilor Frady talked about. So that's I think we are headed in the direction. I appreciate the fiscal sustainability piece. We heard some public on that. and environmental sustainability. Other comments about others.
One other thing on your core services is, I think it's important. Services and resources and
Now, when
we maintain our water service. We maintain our parks and open space. We maintain our library and our rec centers. Just maintain what we have, right? The senior center, yes.
one thought, it's more rhetorical than anything, is that there is certainly an argument, or will be an argument, I think, for saying, probably, maybe not for eliminating most of the core services, but of reducing service levels. It's not a discussion we have to have tonight, but that's gonna be a question of trade-offs. Just something to be thinking about. Because I think it's gonna be proposed in different areas. You don't have to agree with it, I'm just saying it's gonna be a challenge, yeah, remember that.
Yeah, so I mean, a few things. One, I think, there's definition of core services. So I think, water, sewer, power, roads, sidewalks, right? Like those for me are like the core services, police and fire, emergency, hospital, kind of like survival, right? And so having like lived in Durham, North Carolina, where we didn't have sidewalks 90% of the city, it's like, I don't know, we're kind of missing what felt to me as a core service, the ability as a pedestrian to walk through a town, not to walk on the road. When I lived in North Carolina, in Rwanda, the power would go out all the time. And so like, wow, like we're really missing a core service of power, right? When I lived in San Francisco, there was garbage all over the streets, like so core service of a clean place. So if we're talking about soccer fields as core services, then I'm all in. Like, yeah, I think a good that we're gonna do on the core service was either decrease it or do something that I don't consider a core service. So I am not diminishing the importance of core services by saying I don't think it should be on our work plan. I don't think we're doing a lot of work as a council on our core services. It's not my projected theory of what we're doing in 2026 is getting around this table to talk about our core services. That I just don't see that.
Before we get, I think you're kind of edging over into our next piece, and that's fine. I think also some of these topics we're gonna refine. Because I think you raised good points about what is, what isn't. And we'll come back to that. And I don't want to suggest, Councilman Coulson, we're absolutely done with 4 boxes, either the council or Hefner.
Or hand sign.
Was that a council member Hayes, Hefner adjacent?
I was just gonna agree with the mayor pro tem. I think that I think it's a little bit of a semantic distinction to work on. And I was including all that stuff. I think if we close the rec center tomorrow, we'd find out that people consider it a service. People would say this is one of the main things the city does for me. But to me, the amenities are one of the core service, but maybe we want to change it to city services or just services, or something that. Cause that was like, what's a non-core service that we provide? And I'm sure we can think of some. But like, we do, I think of everything important that the city pays for that benefits residents to core service. And so I think we're just having a semantic distinction, but I think that is important in terms of naming the bucket and like conceptually, what is that area?
Maybe what we could do is kind of asterisk on that. I think there's a lot of energy around, so. Putting some, what it is, what it isn't. What's the difference between that amenity and then,
Is that anywhere better defined, maybe in the survey, in 2024, the resident survey? I couldn't get it to come up with the link and I can't find it on our website, so. I have the same frustration I think residents do with that.
I would say that it's not defined to the level that for this conversation.
here's what I'm gonna push ahead because the time check.
I did, it wasn't just like.
Oh,
Because
you're one organism.
No, we're two separate.
Yeah, okay.
Humans. So I also think it would be beneficial in this core services conversation to look at our charter as well. I mean, some might say open space is in the charter and that should be considered core service. So if we're going to redefine what this means, I'd like to dig in the charter as well.
And the codes. I think
We don't have
there's.
to do that tonight, obviously,
Yeah.
but I'd like it on the list.
Yes. Good. For now, I'd like to move on if that's okay with folks. Or at least if it's, this is an uncomfortable conversation because we want to talk. Get it? I want to talk about more too. but-
My question, what is move on? What's the next?
Move on is talking about priority actions within each of these, recognizing that we've got some uncertainty about exactly what is in and what each of these definitions means. I think we've got definitions that we have worked plan last year, and I understand we're gonna tweak them. I think that's.
I think we're sweet, because I'd like to talk about the others. Again, I haven't really spoken to any of the three, but it sounds like this next step will be digging in
That's-
deeper at each one, so I think that's great for me.
Yeah.
Great.
So, why don't we start with, and this is in no particular order, but except that they're on page. But why don't we start with economic vitality? Thoughts about priority actions within economic vitality. You have a handout about some of the accomplishments that we've. You've got also some of the actions, council actions that we have listed as priority action last year. So one of them, yeah,
It's simplifying our code. That is a huge action, like, that council can do, like simplifying our codes to make, things more clear and easy to accomplish.
my question would be just clarifying what part of the code, because that's a huge tall. order.
Sorry, I thought like building code, development code, like, I think we have a very complicated process for doing.
How do you feel about simplifying the process?
Yeah, simplifying the process, simplifying the codes. I mean, for instance, our energy code, I think, is an example of something that we're, I think, chomping at the bit to get to a simple, clean code that matches our integrity, right? But like something that's digestible and understandable and can be followed easily and then implemented or assessed easily by our staff. That's one example, right? But yeah, also our process simplifying our process, and I think we've made strides there, and I think we need to continue to simplify our process for simple procedures. I think there are things that get mucked up with our government, some necessary, but I think we can simplify.
Sorry, I think. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I actually think this is one of the things like Councilmember Fahey was commenting on with the crossover between like housing and economic vitality. I think this is one of the things that I'm hearing a lot from developers on. Just being engaged in other housing conversations with regional housing plan and things like that is process. Time is money. So there's your economic vitality piece for the city because we can talk about business things. But then housing piece comes into it too, to make it more affordable and actually actionable. It is going to be streamlining the processes, making them be able to get through things quick. There's suggestions of using AI to help like verify code things that are coming through, like checking the boxes instead of having humans do it, as we clarify what is needed. And I just think that I agree. I think having that and figuring out how we can improve the policy process would be excellent in the next year and a half.
I too agree. It's important. You know, I think we have the development code rewrite tacked on at the end of the comp plan. I think that is the right next step. I am eager to get started on that. I do want to say, I think I sincerely hope we're done with the comp plan this year and that it's buttoned up and finished. I'll note that it's been a high priority item on our last 3 city council work plans with 4 to 6 meetings scheduled for each of the last 3 years. I think so far we've had basically 1 substantive meeting on the comp plan. And I continue to be anxious about having appropriate council input into the development of the land use document that's a guide development of Louisville for the next decade. And I think we need, I'm glad there's been lots of public input and stakeholder input and commission input. I know it's on our 25 plan. I'm extremely hopeful about getting it done in 25. If it isn't, it has to be item number 1 to finish as soon as possible in 26. And the development code rewrite falls into that same category for me for the reasons Mayor Pro Tem said. I think we saw the other night when we were hearing about the application of the ITDSG that we have development documents that are badly out of date for the things we're trying to accomplish, and that we have a great planning staff that comes up with workarounds and loopholes and helps counsel applicants as to how to get a good project built with our sort of old guidelines. But wouldn't it be great if we had a written down process that matched what we're trying to do and guidelines that match what we're trying to do. And this, I'll just throw this one in for good measure, that we could have a lot of projects get approved by Rob and Rob's department and never even hit our desk because our code is so good and so efficient. That would be what success looks like to me, is like we don't see a lot of land use applications unless they are the sort of red tail ridge scale.
Yes. Before I make a comment, I just wanted to ask a question. So some of the items that are on the work plan for 2025 likely continue. So I don't know, should we
Listen, if you think they relate to economic vitality, do that too.
So, yeah, but so yeah, it's on the work plan for this year. I'm also interested in development code rewrite, and Dietrich sort of mentioned, I think that should include the design guidelines as well. One other thing I was toying with, was kind of wondering with the comp plan being finished and see you coming in, I was wondering if it might be a good idea to have some kind of Caslin revitalization task force. Basically like, not us, but like a group of people interested in
relevance, they sort of come together and sort of guide how some recent developments and some soon upcoming developments like fit with what we do in the comp plan about how we should.
Others?
We call it a small area plan.
Or, no. No.
It's a big area.
I think in that kind of mentality, what's the McCaslin one is new, I appreciate that. I think we've mentioned things that are on the 2025 comp plan. I was gonna mention the downtown vision plan, because that's gonna be a very ongoing thing in 2026. I think will take a lot of our time, so I think that's gonna bleed into 26. But it's a 25 plan, and then the code rewrites. So these are all like, they're already on here. We just wanna make sure we either complete this here or keep working on them. But one that we haven't mentioned, which is so of the moment, right, is the Sundance Film Festival and that impact on our economy over the next 10 years, starting in 2027, and certainly now and into 2026, we'll be needing to do the lion's share of that work way before January 2027. So that's a general topic that I would add to our work plan, because I think there will be policy changes on essentially short-term rentals in January, or transportation dollars, or infrastructure things that we need for that. So I think it's going to be a big conversation, and will have a huge benefit to us economically overall.
Yeah, I was actually, I think that Caleb went ahead and answered my question. Just listening to Glenn finished. Was actually more about the Sundance Film Festival. Should it be a separate line item? How much involvement, to your point, of course, services not needing a ton of necessarily specific involvement from council, but will Sundance really need a lot of our input, or is it more, the business associations in our community and our staff that are gonna have the big heavy lift? And then the couple of maybe changes with allowing different things for short-term rentals, is that, like that one-off thing, does it require like putting this on here so we get one meeting in 26? I don't know. I mean, maybe it is. I'd love to have conversations about it. It comes up at the EBC meetings all the time, like it really encouraging staff. But the question becomes, how much full council meeting time are we really putting into discussing the Sundance Film Festival? Although I like in the forefront, it's just using your exact same arguments for services.
Just a couple of things. Really, this is sort of adding to that first point, just a little bit of my thought about that. When I think about streamlining process, what I think about is really several different characteristics: simple, speedy, consistent, inexpensive, certain, and competitive. The last one being, we gotta think about what's happening in other places and whether we're making it really harder, much easier to just throw things off to the other side. I think all of these are great. This is sort of a meta point, but I think we're underutilizing our committee structure, for lack of better. I think there's things we can do serving the goals that we come up with in teams. Perhaps moving some things ahead, perhaps learning some things. We can talk about that later, but I see some of this in our task forces, whether we're involved or community members are involved, or both. Staff, that's a staff thing as well. But why don't we move, if we can, to I don't want to move to core services, because we'll go down. How about safety? Let's talk about safety. I'll put one thing on there. I'd like we have a number of them that are on there and in progress. I think to the extent that those bounce over, I think all of them are pretty good. Honestly, they're one of the things that I I'd love for us to address, and I think it's a safety concern at bottom, is lack of cell coverage. And what I mean by that, right, is whatever we need to do. Some of that is frankly stuff that community members need to do. Some of it is stuff we can do. There's some of it that we can push providers to do. But I really do think that when things go haywire, people rely on their cell phones. In my house, one side it works, one side it doesn't.
The mayor can't be reached in 50% of the South. That's egregious.
Well, I don't know
Well,
if that's
to,
true.
to back you up, I mean, you know, I have a friend that lives on Grouse Court and they don't really have cell coverage in their home, and right, so they also don't have a landline. So when the kids are home alone, which is appropriate at 14 years old or whatever, it's difficult, like from a safety perspective, like to not have an easy way to communicate is a genuine safety concern for a large, portion of our community. So I appreciate you adding it to the list of an actual safety issue that you should address from that angle, not from it's so annoying that my phone call dropped. Like that is annoying to drive along, hi, and my phone call dropped. That's frustrating, but that's not a safety issue, right? Safety issue is people not being able to communicate, we don't need to be able to.
And it's not an amendment. Yes.
I will add on safety issues, well, two, actually. One, I'm going to just slightly disagree with Councilman Kern's comment about using AI. Cause I don't think it's that point right now.
I'm sorry, I
but-
was conveying somebody else's views in another.
Right, okay. And the other thing on cell phone service, extend that also to electric service. And if the power is being cut off, that presents a real safety hazard for people who are on life support machines or things like that. So that's another safety issue.
Others to add, subtract, that's one word. Hamilton. No. Hamilton.
So I know you've made progress in e-bike safety. I still am not satisfied with where we're at. Not at any fault of staff or anyone, we're also limited in what we can do, but I would love to see in 2026 really push more on what we're able to do. Cause I think we all see what's gonna happen in the future if we don't take a hard stance on safety and enforcement, licensing, or whatever it is that we decide to do.
And my ad would just be to continue, I think this was on somebody's slide, continue the traffic safety for pedestrians and bikes. I think one half of the point is helping the teens figure out they need to follow the rules of the road. And half of the point is helping the people in 3,000-pound vehicles follow the rules of the road, which is far more deadly.
I think that's a good question, actually.
About the cell coverage, did the AT&T one go through? We were supposed to have the AT&T was gonna be adding that. Did that actually happen this year?
Yeah, that's my understanding, actually.
Oh, okay, great. And then, and I think, was Verizon ever part of the conversation as well, or is it at this point just AT&T? And I'm asking because it's relevant to this, taking it up, and I get hundreds of questions about Verizon.
My understanding was just.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
And in trouble. Is that part of it?
That's different. This
Yeah,
whole system is.
All right, now, one other thing I would include in there. This may fall in other buckets too, but I think it has relevance here is something I keep pounding on, which is additional use and promotion of text notification. Because that's something a city can help with. It's largely I understand that piece. That's the one of the core safety.
Like all communications.
Not all,
or-
no, not all, but a lot of people get their information that way. There's certain unpreparedness that takes care of that. But for the city standpoint, it'd be Good. Take some load off of staff to have to respond to some, or not to deal with some of the hauntiness that sometimes comes from those. Providing information to people about safety. Services. Let's go, yeah. Get theirs.
Actually, quite like the idea that Anne Breda discussed in her email. It's kind of, basically strategic planning for resilience and adaptation. And I don't know what form that could take in the next year. I feel like there's some efforts going on in the city at the moment that will probably inform that kind of planning. So, but nothing sooner about that. Some form or another, it might be nice to start working towards that next year.
Okay. Okay. For services. Don't have anything about court services, let's move on to housing. People. Right, thoughts about the core service list that we've had, things you want to add to this? Yes.
Yeah, so I previewed this before. I do want to add to this the sort of fiscal sustainability piece. And I think it's a few different things to me. One is how do we make sure our existing core services are sustainable? Two is how are we looking at and thinking about service expansions? That's certainly been brought to our attention, and I think there's some level of interest for, but no level of money for. And do we want to have that conversation about going to the voters or some other mechanism? So we had an initial version of that conversation at the last finance committee meeting, and Ryder put together a really great overview of sort of what the options would look like if anybody's interested in looking at that and hasn't seen it yet.
Interrupt you just for a second, I think it was caught as fiscal sustainability, is that?
Yeah.
You just said sustainability.
Yeah, fiscal.
Okay, good, sorry.
And then the third piece that I know the city manager has brought to our attention a few times is we have a historic preservation tax that's expiring, and we can debate whether that's a core service, but we need to add that to our list somewhere.
Others? Yes.
Well, I'll start with the housing, the historic preservation, so I have that under housing, but you're right, we can debate where that goes. We certainly need to strategize, what that ballot language, if it does go back on the ballot, look like. What success would look like to me with that is, considering expansion of it to include benefits for ADAs, deed restricted, add some sustainable building materials or heating, like really thinking big about it. So it can help achieve some other goals that we have in the communities. It's a pretty solid pot of money, I believe, that we're sitting on there. I think we could be creative with it. Under core services, if we land on the definition of core services is greater in our community than utilities, all that stuff. I think the weed management plan maybe fall under that, and I think that's due to be reviewed anyways, if I'm understanding correctly, right, in the near future. So to me, that's a logical place to slot that. City manager, but I think you sent out an email. Can you remind us? Has to be reviewed every certain amount?
Supposed to be every 5 years, I believe. And so PPLAB's request aligns with when we should be reviewing the integrated weed management.
Anyways, okay. That's all for me.
I think this just maybe builds on the fiscal sustainability under core services, because I do think, I, along with most of the people who live here, think of parks and open space as a core service. I think the overwhelming support of the tax grid says so. And we do have an issue coming up in the near future with how to pay for our parks, how to pay for maintenance, how to pay for improvements. And if we need more in other parts of town with developmental expansion, how do we get the developers to make sure they're paying for it?
That's Murphy.
Also, maintenance of existing core services. Should be a priority. Maintenance of existing core services.
An overarching. Services.
Right.
Others. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put my 6th annual request that, we decrease our 13 baseball diamonds and add 1 multi-use field.
Is it feasible though?
Yeah,
We should
Maybe
spend,
as we add a field
that's fine.
that we did. That
I'm
we
saying if we're-
reduce
if we're
the
trying to
number of
provide
baseball.
A court, like pickleball courts, and basketball courts, and baseball and softball, and the multi-uses, soccer, lacrosse, ultimate frisbee, field hockey, there's so many, we do not have a single multi-use field in the city that isn't owned by Boulder Valley School District, right, that is accessible to residents, not one in our entire city, like it's an embarrassment.
and soon we won't have an inline skate park either. So like tack that on for a project for the, I mean, are you thinking that this might be a project for our staff for the Parks and Rec for?
I mean, there are
department?
things that have already come up around it, like, Wood Rock. Those 2 baseball fields being converted to soccer fields, and, Councilmember Hefner was joking about the. What is it, $275,000 feasibility study to see if we could put soccer fields
Yes,
there,
just put the soccer fields there.
instead of just putting fields there, but anyways.
The
Stay
IGA,
up, stay up. Up in the.
That's, I appreciate it.
it's part of the IGA. Competition meeting, sorry. Like, they just goes in with that, is that like, I mean, that would require council's kind of involvement, is if we're gonna be trying to, like, get that activated or something.
You know what, let me make a suggestion on that. Can you, the how to pay, well, no, bit, it was the how, look, no funding available. It's the second bullet under fiscal sustainability. It may be coordination and, collaboration with, neighboring jurisdictions. Right, another one that I would put in there is public-private partnerships, thinking of arts. Cultural center is not being something that can be accomplished without that. Throw that. Precisely because. It's expensive, you've got a lot of other things we're talking about. It is 7:30. I have really tried valiantly, but how many people are feeling rushed? Come on council. He's feeling rushed. Councilmember say he's feeling a little rushed.
No.
Oh, I thought you had your hand. All right, can we keep going? We need anything else for services right now? Yes, Councilor.
Would add under historic preservation. I very much agree with what Mark said. I would say, I think we should also take it sort of or have a discussion, take a deep dive around issues of equity. How we spend that money.
Can you say a little more about that?
I mean, quite frankly, like, there are a lot of cases where people who could really afford to do the work that they're doing, nevertheless get money. And the amount of preservation they might do, can be fairly limited, where let them preserve basically a facade, which, doesn't, not that it doesn't have value, but is it really equitable to be giving those people money to preserve the facade when they really afford those sorts of questions?
I think what I would add to that, to Councilmember Hamilton's comments, is I think broadening the scope of what can be covered. So, I own a little 800 square foot historic home that's already been landmarked. Can we expand it to like allow me to upgrade the HVAC system in that home? Right, like that's not currently allowed. And so though that might be a population that doesn't have a lot of money, and is wanting to stay in their small, historic home, but have it be upgraded a little bit in a respectful manner. So I think that might be an example of adding
Yeah.
equity to expanding, broadening the use of the funds.
Not to add much more on. Historic preservation, did you mean ADAs? I'm a employment lawyer, so ADA,
For ADAs. Oh, accessible dwell, like.
ADAs, okay.
No, like ADA accessible.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Okay. I'll leave it as- okay,
That's actually part of on the list conscious.
yeah,
I think you're just adding.
right. I was gonna add, that. Being, broadening the scope of what can be covered, and I think, two things, with the amounts of those, I think we're parsimonies about how we do money up, which might help to solve some of the equity issues. I think words are too small in some cases, something to think about. The other thing is, I would love for those trying to save staff time and money and energy of the council, for more of those to be able to go through. If not completely, by way of administrative process, at the very least on consent, if we can do that. But that's, I mean, I'm looking for process issues, but
Just a point on that, the only reason I don't like that is, it is such a joy as a resident to hear these proposals and presentations, and most residents, unless they're living right here and see the changes, they wanna know about it. They wanna understand about the text, and I think it's not just about our time, it's about the residents who have asked us to sit here, what they wanna hear that we do, that our staff does. And that is a huge, big thing, I think, that residents choose to invest in, and our staff, helps facilitate. I think making sure that those presentations have such an important public service.
people have chosen to tax themselves, right? I get the counters. I think those are really important. Just a thought. Anything else on housing? Yeah, or sorry, core services.
Yeah, it's kind of a small thing, but I would like to see us actually have bicycle parking at every city facility. Parks,
But events,
spaces, events too.
I love it at events.
I guess it falls under this heading. I am quite interested in a universal recycling ordinance, like several of our neighboring municipalities have recently adopted. Yeah, I guess it falls under parks. I think it might be useful to think about a park in the North End.
Big part. They've got a huge level. Yeah.
Well, let's, we don't have to debate it. I mean, there may be other places for parks too. Just kind of some stuff out.
Then one for open space would be water rights or ECLA. And then I guess it falls under some core services. I would be quite interested in some kind of formalized, like 1% for the arts sort of thing, where whenever we do a capital project or some kind of project, at least set aside 1% or whatever the percentage might be, that goes towards the arts, specifically that one.
That may fit in part under the ways to pay for things. Right, because that's a creative way to pay for one kind of thing.
That might end up being like a trade-off too. Like, what do we decrease to add that versus just add and more add? Because I think that one of the themes that we're hearing is that we're constantly adding and there's not enough. And the residents I think are tapped out at this point, so maybe getting more creative in balancing versus just adding it out.
We're not done with this list. That's a very good point because of it, right? Other, yes.
Can we also, along with the bike racks and EV charging stations, for all city facilities for cars and bikes?
Other things.
Again, I mean, I think this would take a bond measure, but there are at least 2 underpasses that I'd like to try to get done.
Please do.
So help me understand, like, I super appreciate these projects, right? So like, of course, we can't, as a council, focus on underpasses, EV charging, universal recycling, we need all these things. So, you know, right now we're taking notes, but at what point in this process are we, what we did sort of last year was a little bit more, hey, this is, we care about X. And then we let staff kind of determine the projects versus us saying, oh, here's a project, like, for example, I only mentioned it because I felt like I should, we're gonna have this conversation, I should add it. Soccer fields, it's like, yeah, I think recreational fields are important. But like generally, we wanna work on a recreational field portfolio, whatever, but like I wouldn't say a soccer field, right? Because that would be a specific project. So I'm just trying to figure out like, what's the process for narrowing this list down, because I don't want to turn to Josh and be like, no, we don't have time for that this year. Like, is this when I need to push back and say, we don't have time for underpasses in 2026? Or are we gonna have a conversation later about whether or not we had time to address underpasses in 2026?
Let me offer some to that. I think there are projects of. I think staff should, and staff can probably point those out. And I think those are things that I think that those things are gonna be projects. I don't think that they're going to be the priority actions. Now, we can quarrel about that and we'll have additional discussions. And I just want, part of the reason I'm just getting some of these out is to give us a chance, because I know you all prepared for some of these. I would say, if I had to say, that whether I supported underpass master plan again, or something like, I would say no. But I think that's something I want to bracket, and staff can chime in on that about how we might. Am I on the right track in terms of what would be helpful for you?
I think
We'll
that
get
this entire discussion is helpful for us to understand what's on council's mind in terms of areas of opportunity or areas that need to be addressed. But we can go back and to figure out what are the overarching themes associated with this to come up with the priority action items. And then as part of those priority action items, some of these are gonna be subsets of those. So we need to first address this before we get into this detail. And so that's gonna be, how do we address this before we can figure out how to get into this? So staff will go back, evaluate this, figure out what the priority action items that we can pull out of this to put into the work plan. And then we'll still note the projects that are desired or requested. And so that we have an idea of what council's interests are, just recognizing that not all of these projects are going to be implemented, but some of these things, when I'm looking at this, should be part of the cost plan.
Right.
So this will help us to, and I know Adam's participating in this meeting, taking these notes and providing this to the consultant would be helpful for them to, they're preparing to understand what council's priorities are. And so some of these things may already fit in current things that we're doing. So we'll go through it and refine it, and that's part of why we'll have a follow-up discussion.
Okay, is that answered?
Yeah, 2 comments. I would throw one more project on the list, which is city hall space, city space. I think a lot of these sort of fit under that fiscal sustainability concept of like there's all these unfunded capital projects, there's money to come from. If we wait long enough, maybe it'll be CIP money, but if we want to do any of them, in the foreseeable future, we need a new source. But, and then on the pros plan, I hope part of that is those consultants are gonna come to us and ask us questions, like having dialogue with us about what should be in there, and this isn't our only opportunity to get things into the pros plan. Because if it is, I have a lot more to say.
Any other? Dylan.
This one is. Yeah, it's looking ahead. So this one is looking ahead. So in 2027, we have our Excel franchise agreement coming up. And I am very interested in trying to incorporate a carbon tax in our Excel franchise agreement.
On our residents.
On our residents. And businesses.
That certainly, I think, would qualify as a part of it. Anything?
The only thing we skimmed over, and I just want to make sure it gets added emphasis, actually, is some of the stuff that Ann Brennan did bring up. I appreciate that Josh kind of mentioned it, as far as like resilience and wildfire mitigation citywide, and that it be incorporated with a much more actionable plan. I just feel like there's so much on the web, like we've got the Louis stuff coming up, we've got the fire department plan coming up. I just don't want us to think that once we get that, then there's nothing. We need to have conversations after that information so that we know how to apply it citywide and what we're gonna do with it. And we definitely need to designate time for that, as well as maybe part of the conversation is how do we get, we have advisory groups for so many other things, and right now there's not a component of sustainability or anything where we have people who are able to, be an advisory group to us on this. So, and we have one staff member, so I think we're limited and maybe underserviced as a council in not having that.
I think if I could speak to the recovery and resilience item, I think that we're at a point, Sam and I have talked about this. We need to discuss what the next phase is for that division in that position. As we look at joining Boulder ODM, we talked about needing a staff person to facilitate on the city side. But it's time to, I think it's time to look at it from an organizational structure standpoint. As to how, what is the next phase of this look like? And, as we move away from recovery, what does the resilience adaptation look like? And so to me, that's the bigger conversation that incorporates a lot of those items that we need to have. And I wouldn't limit it just to that. I think that from an organizational structure, there's a few things that we need to talk about as to, what would be the most efficient operation in the city.
Else? All right, let's again put time check. Quarter till. But I like editing this to be done. And that is getting through housing and probably some. And what do you think about that as an inspiration? All right, let's go to housing. Councilman Finn.
I would like to see if we could do something in the planning department that would simplify the process for people who want to build affordable housing to get a rezone from commercial or retail to residential. Thinking particularly along the McCaslin corridor, where there's a lot of open space that's zoned commercial, but it's very close to a bus stop and or CU is gonna be putting in their housing. And there's other spots around town as well, but if you got a vacant lot next to a bus stop, affordable housing would be a place to put it.
And again, you've got those current. Projects and actions there, housing. Council.
Yeah, this one may be captured in the development code or sort of code rewrite more generally, but now that we've tackled ADUs and some other stuff, I'd love to keep looking in that direction. I know the governor's been talking about the smart stair concept. I don't know if that's something Louisville be advised to look at, but things sort of in that direction. Are there barriers right now that make development expensive that aren't really serving our current goals? I've been really pleased with the targeted land use code rewrites we've been seeing from Rob and friends, and I'd love to see just sort of more of that flavor to reduce construction costs, reduce zoning costs, whatever the case may be. So stuff, and I think some of that would be consistent with the housing plan.
Yes.
Yeah, I think our 2025 list is still largely ongoing. I appreciate the work we do with ADUs and housing is coming back soon, and the comp plan may help us with, some zoning. I have not seen us really capitalize on Prop 123 or do any acquisition of properties to rezone ourselves, put our RFPs ourselves. So those are already on the list. I don't have a ton of new ideas for housing, but I think implementing these ideas that are have not come to fruition yet is a huge priority for us. So, that is to say, I don't have a lot to add, but I think what's on here is still really important.
I'm just gonna clarify, by smart stair, you meant the single stair building concept?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, because it's more commonly referred to as single stair. I think there's just one little, like, the governor's office and something. I just wanted to put it on here so we actually are all.
As long as it's not a dumb stare, I'm good.
Most stairs are dumb to me. I hate them, so. Okay, yeah, I agree. I think it's a great thing for us to have a conversation about to, again, it's the same thing. Streamline process, streamline the building, make it less expensive, easier for developers to come.
I think along with what this mentioned. And it was sort of potentially some structural. Organizational kinds of things, and potentially some kind of either person or consultant to help us spend the $2 million it's effective. Probably has some ideas. So it's just out there.
Just your collaboration with like other communities, like
Absolutely.
we were talking about, like maybe
That's a
possibly collaborating with Lafayette or Superior. We could even be collaborating with Broomfield. We don't have to stay within the county, especially if a developer is like wants to do something right on like city lines. Maybe that's something that we're working with. And I think as a council, this is about policy change and being like more open to that. With the regional housing studies that are going on through the entire Denver metro region, there is a lot more appetite for working together. And some of that, by the way, is sounding like money is coming from one community into another, back and forth, to facilitate or expedite some of these new housing models or housing opportunities. And we would be remiss, I think, not to be in that conversation and potentially take advantage of other communities that can't do this or don't have the willingness, but we do.
I think it's in code rewrite, but I would say there are a lot of elements of building code that are specific to affordable housing that can be rewritten, whether it's parking standards, density, maximums, unit maximums per acre. Those are all things that are anti-affordable housing in our policies currently, and I think we'll be addressing a lot of those anyway, but it's not clearly in the 2025. Just looking back over the 2025 work plan, there's code updates for ADU, code update for inclusionary housing ordinance. So maybe in that one is where that lies, but just want to say that out loud again, that we have some codes that need retooling.
We'll start with a question. So under the inclusionary housing ordinance, March has not started. We did have a fairly in-depth conversation about what changes we might like to see. And so that seemed like a start to me.
You're right. We should mark that as in progress because we've done that conversation. We did delay this because of some other priorities that have come up. So good catch. We will give ourselves more credit there.
So it sounded like perhaps in conjunction with or around hiring consultants or developing code rewrite, we might combine those efforts or make them complementary to our updates to the house ordinance. So is that what we're thinking about at the moment?
I would, if I could just add, I do think we're gonna, I hope, you never know what's gonna come up, but our intent is to do the inclusionary housing ordinance update this year. Do that onwards, with some of the incentives we're talking about, so I don't know. Need to put it on next year's plan. Unless you wanna make other updates, or, I mean, we'll when we do the land development code rewrite, we'll take a fresh look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. One other little thing. Again, it's in connection with the historical preservation. I think there are some conversations we could have around intersection of affordable housing, historic preservation, or affordable housing and historic preservation.
Yeah, I was just gonna agree with Mayor Pro Tem's point about the code rewrite at the anti-housing aspects of the code, and to me, it ties in a little bit with inclusionary, that like the whole concept of inclusionary comes from the notion of exclusionary zoning, which is what we have, is exclusionary zoning. It's designed to keep certain kinds of developments and frankly, certain kinds of people from living in certain places. And that's why we say some lots have to be a certain size and can only have this kind of unit on it and so on. And so addressing our exclusionary zoning would be a great first step to being more inclusionary, in addition to sort of more incentive driven inclusionary policy by addressing to me what really causes the whole conversation about inclusionary, which is we have exclusionary single family zoning. But I think that's part of the code, right?
I'd like to make sure that one of the things we're focusing on with affordable and attainable housing is specifically senior focused housing. Whether that means, and all the housing, quite frankly, should have at least main floor accessibility. This notion that we're doing 28-inch doorways because they're cheaper, and if like that's what goes into an inexpensive house, so you better be fully able-bodied, that needs to end. We need to be making sure that less able-bodied or seniors we're making sure that that's part of this housing focus. We have a really large aging population in Louisville that I think we're forgetting about a lot of times in this conversation. We keep talking about the needs of Louisville. Well, the needs of Louisville is pretty heavy, soon to be very heavy loaded senior. And we keep talking about other people coming into Louisville. So I'd love it if we can actually think about that. We're talking about housing and find developers that will work with us on that topic.
I just have a general question, and that is, we seem to be spending a lot of money on consultants for various housing issues. Would it be cheaper for us to hire a staff person to deal with all of these housing questions than to keep hiring consultants?
I guess my question would be, what consultants have we hired? I know we talked about hiring somebody But have we hired?
Just to do our housing stuff.
Yeah.
We hired a consultant to do our housing stuff, which is very specific. Type thing. And then we have an IGA city holder oversight of our program for us. Which is. That we anticipate in the future we'll have to pay someone, they're doing pro bono, at least. Pay someone to do some of that oversight, so there's.
But would another staff person assist you in dealing with all these various topics that come up in a more expedient and cost-effective manner?
I think having more staff in all kinds of areas would be great, but. So I would just.
Okay.
I appreciate your framing that as a question. Thank you. Others. One thing I was gonna add. We talked a lot about different terms, talked about affordable housing, small A, capital A, affordable housing, attainable housing, workforce housing. I particularly like mixed income housing best. So if you get captures a variety of different, it gets us off of some of the exclusionary concepts that I think have created trouble for us in just conversations and in the community. Because frankly, the biggest, I don't know, this is a very gross generalization about zoning in America, and I'm sure several people can. But I think living amidst people of different incomes is perhaps the biggest issue, instead of the sort of traditional exclusion of racial term, sort of like this term. But anyway, that's just a thought. One other thought is maybe an overarching concern, which is about all of these. Well, why don't we stop unless you've got other things to add to housing. Then some of them. Okay. I'm gonna hand it over to staff for just a second. I wanted to say, from my perspective, one of the things we haven't addressed tonight, and it's okay that we haven't addressed it. We will, I think we need to this time, is what problem are we trying to solve with this? And trying to run these against that, because I think that's gonna be, I think that will be telling and help us to narrow down. And not just what problem we're trying to address, but what's the measure of success and the time measure of success. Where how it has been discussed. I think Mr. Parcher mentioned it earlier on. I think that's what Mr. Cowan mentioned that a little bit ago of some of these bouncing years that get it done 1 year doesn't mean it's a failure. What's the measure of success and progress? So the other thing I'd point out is the connections of all this could be rendered really nicely with a mind map. That might help people appreciate the connections between them. And I'll leave that to staff and probably better judges of that. So go ahead.
Just want to be sure that philosophically others can feel differently about this, but I still think it's important to read these through the lens of BDI. Philosophically, I feel like these all require those lenses, so that's why I should just keep that on there.
Not silo them. Yeah, like have it be an overreaching theme with everything we do. We look at and think about, right?
It takes the whole organization, community. There still might be specific projects for sustainability DEI, but I think that overarching perspective needs to be applied in 26 as well.
So maybe in that graphic connections between priorities, it could also include priorities and those two overarching viewpoints.
Yeah. Along with that, I think we're probably due at some point for some sort of discussion around DEI. That's. That was. We'll talk about that as we go forward, I think. I need to understand how we'll deal with that. I think we have some idea of what environmental sustainability is. But I think we've had good discussions, but I think it would help to take that forward.
I mean, that was it was under core services, EDI task force. Well, and I think the key part of that is getting the new city manager on board to figure out structurally, what does that mean? Finishing philosophical philosophy wise within the organization.
You're assuming object permanence here. I don't have that. It's not visible to me here. If you, I'm sure it exists further. Honestly,
I don't know what you're saying, but I think we're all on the
if you move,
Yes.
yeah, if you go up in the outline, it's there. It's what you're saying. I got it. All right. Do you feel like you have what you need in terms of helping us to put together the next step? We could talk about a date, but it needs to be before the budget retreat.
Right, we were kind of tentatively looking at July 15th, I think. But we'll work that out.
Yep. Thank you.
Sorry, so I need a little wrap up. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but in your mind, given the notes you've taken today on July 15th, like where are we headed that day?
So we would give you a draft advance that would still show the 4 priorities, because what I heard today is we're gonna continue with the 4 priorities. We're gonna continue with the 2 lenses. We would transfer over the items from the 2025 work plan that will still be either in progress or need to be started, and then also include these additional items. And then also have the discussion about what problem are we trying to solve, what is the measure of success, what is the measure of progress, and then have the graphic that shows the connections. And then we have the discussion related to that of, do you want to further refine this? And how do we further refine it? Thank you. You will want to further refine it.
And those questions, what
Yeah.
problems we're trying to resolve.
The benefit of having this discussion prior to the budget retreat is, at the budget retreat, you're gonna hear about our current financial situation, which I think Councilmember Hefner kind of alluded to earlier, and that, there's going to need to be discussions about how to match resources and service levels to funding availability. And so having this conversation before will be great, and we probably will want to have a conversation after the budget retreat, because that might further refine the prioritization of these items.
I would just note, you don't look at.
Wait. Councilman.
Sorry, I was making.
Emily can make sure we
No, I mean,
her taken care of.
that helped me, that helped everyone else. Yeah, thank you.
Other questions? If you've got additional comments, public, staff, council. Thanks. I do want to say that I appreciate the civility of the discussion. How fast we actually have with this, even though. can pat yourselves on the back a little bit because of that. I appreciate the public's input. Thank you, and we.
Motion to adjourn?
Still have that playoff music, play us out.
Tyler, for 1 second.
Do we have a second?
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Right,
Thank
take
you.
that.